Hello, everybody. Today is the 10th, and we are in the green here on Thursday. So we did our Go Noodle, and today we read aloud One Wild Christmas. For math today, we did 8.4, which was using partial products to multiply. So we started off on page 285, and then I forgot this one. Let me move this to tomorrow before I forget because I forgot to show that today. Highlight it, make it stand out. All right. So independent work was on page 290, 13 through 18, and then students did eSpark and their review when they finished up. So today with the 2-digit, so let's say we have 54 times 16. The first thing that we did is we showed it using the box. So here we're going to take 54, and when you've got a 2-digit by 2-digit, you need your box to be more of a square shape. So this is 54. The value of the 5 is 50. And the value of the 4, because it's in the ones place, is 4. So 50 plus 4. And then on another side, I'm going to put my second number. So the 1 has a value of 10 plus the 6 is in the ones place, so 6. Now, wherever I have those plus signs, I'm going to draw my line down and across. And when I'm inside this box right here, I'm going to look up to my 50. And I'm going to multiply that by 10. Then when I'm in this box here, I'm going to look up to my 4. And I'm going to multiply all the way over to the side here, 10. So 4 times 10. When I'm in this box here, I'm going to look up at the 50. And then I'm going to look over at the 6, so 50 times 6. When I'm in this box here, I'm going to look all the way up to the 4 and all the way over to the 6. So we're doing length times width on each of those. So now I'm going to multiply what I've got in each box to find my partial products. So what I did right now is I did the distributive property. And what that looks like is you're taking this value here, this 5, which has a value of 50, and here you're multiplying it by the 1, which has a value of 10. So this is where I got the 50 times 10. So you put that in parentheses, plus take the 5, which is a 50, and multiply it by the 6, which is what I did here, 50 times 6. So 50 times 10 plus 50 times 6 plus, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my 4. I'm going to multiply it by the 10. So 4 times 10 plus, which is what I did here, and then 4 times 6, which is what I did here. So this is that distributed property, and it's just organized a little bit differently and represented in this box, which just kind of keeps everything together nice and neat, which is nice. So let's go ahead and start multiplying. So 50 times 10, 5 times 1 is 5, and we're going to place those 2 zeros. 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 6 is 24. And 50 times 6, 5 times 6 is 30. Add, you've got 1 0, so place that 0 there for 300. And those are our partial products. And with partial products, we add them up. So we're going to take 500 plus 300 plus 40 plus 24. And when we add all that up, we have 4, 6, and 8. So 54 times 16 is 864. So a couple things that I noticed in class is students were doing everything in the box, all the multiplication, all the everything with the breaking it down, the harder part, that was done perfectly. And then they would go to add these up, and instead of writing it how I've got everything lined up, they would do something like 500, 300, and then when they put the 40, they'd put like 440 over here. And so then when you have your 40 in the wrong place, you get a completely different answer. So here you would be adding this 4, which is in the tens place, with all of these that are in the hundreds place. So they were doing all this work, all the hard part, or the not necessarily hard, but the more challenging part, and then they would get to the addition, and that's where we would make a mistake, and then the whole answer gets thrown off. So be really careful, line up those. See how I've got some space? I could draw a line through. I've got them kind of spaced out a little bit to where everything is organized, looking neat. So try to make sure that you're really careful when you write those, because that's really the main mistake that I saw. Everybody was doing pretty good, so um, just try to be, real organized with that. So let's try one more. So let's do 16 times 32. So here I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of using the box, I'm just going to use the distributed property. And so I'm just going to write them out. So the first thing I see is the 10. And this one here, I'm going to multiply it by this 3 here. But those is not a 1, it's not a 3, it's actually 10 times 30. Plus, I'm going to take the 10 and I'm going to multiply it by the 2. 10 times 2. Now I'm going to do the same thing but with the 6. So I'm going to say plus 6 times 30 plus 6 times 10. I'm sorry, 6 times 2. I don't know why I said 10. All right, so let me double check because I just said the wrong thing. So 10, hey, y'all hush. 10 times 30, 10 times 2, 6 times 30, 6 times 2. All right, so now that's my distributed property. Now I'm going to multiply that out and get my partial product. So here, 10 times 30, I know that 1 times 3 is 3 with 2 zeros, plus 10 times 2 is 20, plus 6 times 30, 6 times 3 is 18, with 1 zero added there, plus 6 times 2 is 12. So that is my partial products. So now I'm going to add these together. I know that 20 and 180 is 200. 200 and 300 is 500 plus another 12, so that would be 512. So here you really have to pay close attention to those values and really make sure that you break your number apart correctly. Like you can't just say that this is a 1. You have to look at where it's at. It's in the tens place, so it's a 10. Here, this 3, same thing. It's in the tens place, so it's not a 3, it's a 30. So just really making sure that you're breaking down each of those correctly according to their place value, and then multiplying correctly, double check. Make sure you got the right amount of zeros that are brought down, and then of course make sure you've added them up. And that is, again, this line right here is the distributed property. This line right here is the partial products. This right here is your final product of what 16 times 32 equals. So 16 times 32, 512. Alrighty. Okay, then all right, so that was math. And then for reading today, we went to Seesaw and we went to the 4th Street Cafe. And today we were on page 11. So we're at the dessert part of our menu. So here we did a connections cookie. And so it was, what does this text remind you of from your personal life? So when we make connections, we connect things to, our personal, like what we've personally read, maybe something we read in class, maybe something that we've heard from. Maybe we have somebody that we know that has gone through the same thing, um, you know, something going on in our community. So just making that connection, when you read something and it makes you think of something else, you're making connections, which is good because it helps you. Um, it helps you to better understand what it is that you're reading. So I said the wrong page. It's page 9. So we read A Hero's Best Friend. So this is about a man named Joe, and he was in the Navy, and he lost his leg while he was in service, and he had a lot of anxiety and depression and things like that. And he got with a group called America's Vet Dogs, and they got him connected with this dog here named Galaxy. And so the article's all about how she helps him, kind of have more of a positive outlook on life, helps with his anxiety and his stress, and helps him do, sometimes when he has to use his wheelchair, Galaxy helps him, open doors and do, fetch different things for him, that kind of, just help him, not just with the easing the stress and all that, but just helping him with some daily tasks that are difficult with, having a prosthetic leg. So we read that. And so we read 9 and 10. And then we just talked about some personal connections. So students, had connections with, family members that they know that are in a wheelchair, or, with people being in the military, or one had somebody in their family that has a service dog. So we talked about different connections like that we made, and that just, again, it helped us strengthen our understanding of what we were reading. So that was great. After that, we went and students had time to work on their read aloud. So these are due tomorrow. So students need to record. Um, and then they had their Christmas around the world. So today they did the Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday should be done, and now Thursday. So this is all about holidays, Christmas in Mexico. And then there's 5 questions here, and then they can draft that. And this is going to be worked on tomorrow and all next week as well, so that can stay as a draft. And then in writing today, we took some notes on interjections. So if you need those, please let me know, and I will get those for you. Um, we did well. First, they after we did the notes on interjections, they went here and they clicked on this where it says writing interjections under week 16, and they completed that. And then we didn't have too much time left, and let's see here. Oh, let me open up. I didn't open up it all the way. Let me open up mine. So we finished up interjections. We took a little quiz on it. That was what that was on the Google Classroom. And then for writing, the grammar part of it, we started a new section talking about how to use quotation marks correctly. So when they finished their quiz, they worked on their writing, and their writing. I'm still seeing some students that are sharing theirs or accidentally turning it in. They have a whole bunch of these pages. They don't need to do every single page. They only need to pick one, and then I ask them to delete the rest. And then the other things on here at the bottom are all of the things that we've been doing together. So these have all been done in class together, so they need to be completed. And then today for Thursday, we didn't finish, so we'll pick up with this tomorrow because we ran out of time and had to go to lunch. But this is quotation marks for dialogue, and it's we've got some examples over here. So the one that we looked at today was when we have the dialogue tag coming at the beginning. So here Avery said, "Look at that giant tree." So the dialogue tag, dialogue is when people are speaking back, or when people are speaking, and this tag is telling you who's the one talking. So here, when it says Avery said, Avery's the one speaking, and then what's in quotation marks, that's what Avery actually said. So the rule is when the tag is at the beginning, you put a comma, you put whatever you're going to say in quotation marks, and you end it with a period, and the period has to be on the inside of those quotation marks. So here we looked at these two. This one was at the end because it says, "I can't find my keys anywhere, Owen whined." So the tag, what was said or who said it, is at the end. So we skipped that one because we were just doing the beginning. So here's one. So it says, Diego yelled, "I'm on my way down." So the tag is Diego yelled. That's who's talking. And then we put the comma. And then what Diego said is, "I'm on my way down." So that's the part that's in the quotation marks. And it gets a period at the end. And notice the period is on the inside of those quotation marks. So we will keep working on that tomorrow. And then there's another four for Friday as well. So we'll try to get all those in tomorrow. So students drafted that. And then for science today, we did our investigation. And let me pause this real quick so I can pull up. All right, so we watched this video on groundwater, and then we did our investigation. So let me go ahead and play it. It's just a quick 2 minutes.
Roughly 70% water. However, only 3% of this water is fresh water. Much of this fresh water is frozen in glaciers. You'll find some of the water in rivers and lakes. But almost 30% of this fresh water is groundwater. But what is groundwater? Welcome to Moo Moo Math and Science and Groundwater. Groundwater is water that finds its way between the gaps of rocks and sediments underground. As the water seeps into the ground, it may find its way into an aquifer. Aquifers are large underground rock layers saturated with groundwater. An aquifer is not an underground river, but large porous layers of rock. For example, the Floridian Aquifer covers the entire state of Florida and is over 100,000 square miles. Think of an aquifer like a huge underground sponge that soaks up the water that falls to the surface of the earth. If you grabbed a shovel and started digging straight down, you may strike water. The first water you strike is called the water table. Below the water table, the rock may be completely soaked. This is called the saturation zone. The rocks and minerals above the saturation zone may be dry and is called the unsaturated zone. So how does this water end up in the ground? When it rains, some of the water moves down into the ground. If this water moves deep enough, it can stay there for a long time, like thousands of years. However, not all of the groundwater stays underground. Much of the surface water comes from groundwater and aquifers. If the ground dips below the water table, the groundwater will flow to the surface and may create a body of surface water, like a lake. Groundwater can also flow out of the water and create a stream. This is called a spring. However, some groundwater is so deep that it's difficult to get to. These bodies of groundwater are called confined groundwater. Humans depend on groundwater for drinking water and for growing crops. This groundwater can be reached by digging a well. There are thousands and thousands of wells throughout the world that provide drinking water and water for our crops. If you'd like to know more about groundwater, this playlist will help. And as always, thanks for watching, and Movie Math uploads a new math and science video every day. Please subscribe and share.
All right. So we watched that about the groundwater, and then we took a plastic cup. Come on. We took a plastic cup, and on the inside we filled it with little rocks, little pieces, little gravel, and we filled up the rest with soil. And so all right, so we mixed all that up. My beautiful drawing here. All right, so we put that in our cup, and then we talked a little bit, and we'll talk about this big time when we start our soil unit. But we talked about with soil, we compared sand and clay. And so I'll put sand on this side and clay on this side. So these are two different types of soil. And with sand, you have, move this back down a little bit. With sand, you have very large particles. And so the little individual pieces that make up sand are really large. And with clay, it's the opposite. They're really, really tiny. With sand, you can actually see with your eyes. You don't need a microscope. But with clay, they're really, really super, super tiny. You can't see all the little individual parts. And that's what gives clay, like when people use clay for art and crafts and things like that, and they mold it and they do different stuff with it. um, the particle size is what allows it. Those particles are so close together, and when they get wet, they get sticky, and um, they're able to, like, you can mold it and it'll stay into however you mold it. Sand, the way that it is, those particles, you couldn't add water and roll it up into a ball like you can with the clay as well. So here with the water, so we took some water and we poured the water in. So let me get some water. And what happened is um, you'll have water. So like with sand, with these big gaps, the water will come in and it'll go right through the big gaps because those of how the particle sizes are. And you'll have quite a bit of water go through that type of soil. But with clay, clay makes it harder because these are so closely packed that a lot of the water, some will come out, but a lot of the water will be retained or held on to by the soil. So you won't have as nearly as much water drain out. So with ours, um, we got to see that. So we poured water in, and so we could see water going down through some of these cracks and areas, and there'd be some areas where some water would collect because there would be a big gap, and then some would go down to the bottom, and we'd have another area where there was a big gap, and it would start to collect a little bit. And that's what happens with our that's what groundwater is. It's these collections of water underground. And so one part of that video was showing about how lakes and stuff like that are formed. And so we poured even more water, and then even more water, and then even more water. And pretty soon this whole thing, we had more water. So at the top here, you could see all this water gather on the top, and that's because the water level was higher than what we had with our soils. So there were some pieces still of the soil kind of, mixed in, but I told the kids to let it settle, and that should go to the bottom. And then that's how, you have lakes and stuff like that form, because that water level is higher than the land around it. So the other thing that we showed is with flooding. So I asked the kids, I was telling them to pour it really, really slow. And then I said, okay, what happens if you pour it, in kind of fast? And we had this collection of water at the top where eventually it soaked down, but at the beginning it just stayed and kind of puddled at the top. And that's what happens with floods, is there's just so much water that it's not able to soak through the ground. The rate that it's soaking is a lot slower than how much rain is coming from the sky, and so you get these big puddles that don't have anywhere to go, so they just keep kind of getting higher and higher, and that's your flooding that you have, and then eventually that water will drain. But for that time, it can be pretty bad. So we did that, and then students went to library at 12:35, and then when they came back, we did a little bit of coding on their water cycle project, and then fourth grade teachers today had extended planning, so they were asked to continue working on things that they needed to make sure that they are ready for um, Friday when we turn all of our things in from the week. And so they had about another 45 minutes of asynchronous time where they could work on their things. And then they went to specials, and that was it. So let me know if you need those, the notes that we took in writing on interjections. And then I think, let me double check. All right. All right. Looks good. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Bye, guys.